Good morning, folks. Everything new under the sun. It appears as if the U.S. apparently is planning a tactical strike, and this is news. We're going to take a look at an article which is reporting on that. I think it's a U.S. senator who came out and has said that. Let me click OK on that one. First, as always, well, not as always, but as is always good, let's take a look at scriptures as it relates to what we're talking about this morning. And we're talking about wars and rumors of wars, and we're seeing really the rumors of war right now. That's the big thing. I go to Kent Hovind's What on Earth book, and he has this book which then demonstrates. Let me see if I can I make this one smaller here? He has a book that demonstrates the differences between the passages here. And so this is, let me go here. This is, there we go, you can see it, Matthew 24. Reading in Matthew 24, verse 6, it says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." So we expect wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. Let's go to Mark 13, verse 7. It says, "And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be not troubled, for such things must be, but the end is not yet." And verse 8 says, "Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places." I would suggest to you maybe that there's a chronological aspect to this, and that these events happen in the order that they're listed. Wars, rumors of wars, then nations rise against nations. These are the wars, kingdom against kingdom. Then what comes next? Well, earthquakes in diverse places, famines. Now, there is a bit of mixing as birth pains increase, but I would suggest that the big events are maybe going to be in chronological order. I'm just putting that out there as speculation. So then comes famine, then comes trouble, and then I can totally see that. First, we have war in Iran, and then on the heels of that come famine. The U.S. is heading into a sort of a famine right now with the corn production going to be way below USDA estimates this year due to all the flooding. There was a whole article about that, which I don't have in my list of articles, but that was one of them. There's so many things I could talk about. Luke 21 then says, "I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them." Verse 9 says, "But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not by and by." Then it says, "Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines, pestilences, fearful sights, and great signs." So again, in order, we have wars and rumors of wars, and then we have famines, and then we get into pestilences. And I think there's probably going to be a large, for example, mosquito population, that sort of thing, coming out of all the flooding and all the waterborne insects that are going to bloom because of all this flooding through the hot months of the summer. And that's part of the pestilence. And the famine comes because they can't grow in their fields. Fearful sights. Then we have, after these things, we have fearful sights coming. You can see the levels of fear and trouble upon the earth escalating. That's exactly what happens with birth pains. So where there's multiple levels of things. So we start off small with rumors of wars, and then we get into wars, and then we get into famines, pestilences, and then we get into the big stuff. Fearful sights, great signs shall there be from heaven. It says, "But before all these things they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you." So expect to see some persecution coming as well. And that's really already starting to happen. There was a pastor in Ontario who was preaching in the LGBT district, obviously against homosexuality. And I believe he went to jail for that. I believe they arrested him for that, for hate speech. So this is what's coming upon the earth. We can see these things happening now, even in our westernized, quote-unquote, Christian nations. These things are happening. more and more Christians are sidelined and called out for hate speech because the world doesn't accept it. They don't want to hear anything that's going to make someone else maybe feel bad or sad or something like that. So let's then go to some of the articles here. This is usni.org, Marine Tracker. It's interesting because you can take a look at the various ships that are out there. These are the approximate positions of U.S. Navy's deployed carrier strike groups and amphibious ready groups throughout the world as of January 17, 2019. So we see the Kearsarge ARG in Aqaba, Jordan, Middle East. We see the Abraham Lincoln CSG in the Straits there of Hormuz, or just before the Straits of Hormuz. We see the Boxer ARG, again in a similar region, Ronald Reagan over by China there. The Wasp over by Australia, and the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. Looks like it just came out of port in the U.S. So interesting locations of U.S. military. And so we have rumors apparently coming out of the UN. UN officials. UN officials are saying U.S. planning a tactical assault on Iran. Is the U.S. going to strike Iran soon is the question. Diplomatic sources at the UN in New York revealed to Mariv that they're assessing the United States plans to carry out a tactical assault. Does that mean tactical nuclear weapons? On Iran in response to the tanker attack in the Persian Gulf. And so many people are calling it false flag. I would suggest, I don't know that there's a ton of evidence for a false flag, other than that tends to be it's kind of the in thing to call something, any attack on the United States is always considered a false flag, pretty much by everybody. I don't know if any attacks are believed to be real anymore by most people, because kind of anything that happens is a false flag. That being said, the possibility is there, but there you go. According to officials, since Friday, the White House has been holding incessant discussions involving senior military commanders, Pentagon representatives, and advisors to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump apparently just had a re-election campaign stop. I saw that on Facebook. There was a post there. So he's getting into re-election mode. In the meantime, he's probably going to want to look strong on the military front, and I don't think there's anything holding him back from doing a strike. And often the strikes come in the last years of the administration anyways, because the presidents at the time may not have any more time to do it. So if there's a strike, historically it seems to happen in the last couple of years of the presidency. So that timeline would match up. We also have a fall period approaching, which is another timeline for these sorts of things when they generally happen. It says military action under consideration would be aerial bombardment of Iranian facility linked to its nuclear program. The bombing will be massive, but will be limited to a specific target, which kind of makes sense to me based on what they've done in the past. They're not going to go after the civilians. They're not going to get the civilians riled up. They're going to go after the military specifically and try and hamper their current situation, hamper their production of nuclear weapons. The decision, it says, to carry out military action against Iran was discussed in the White House before the latest report that Iran might increase the level of uranium. According to reports, there's 10 days left before they're going to start really breaking out of the rules of the agreements that were made, that Iran is really going to be breaking outside of the rules and really ratcheting up their development of nuclear weapons. The officials also know that the United States plans to reinforce military presence in the Middle East, and in the coming days will send additional soldiers. So what's the deal with the additional soldiers? Well, this is a Debka file article. Russia and China strongly condemn U.S. 1,000 troop deployments. So there's another 1,000 going there. I think there's already 1,500 there. Moscow and Beijing, China and Russia. Those are the two kind of balancing, if you will, world superpowers. And of course, they're not official superpowers, but if there were to be any other superpowers, they would probably be the other two military and economic superpowers. Moscow and Beijing denounced U.S. decision to deploy 1,000 more troops to the region as pumping up tensions that could open Pandora's box in the region. And Beijing Foreign Minister Yi urged the United States to change its practice of extreme pressure and Iran to make prudent decisions and not so easily abandon the 2015 deal, which was already abandoned by the United States. There's some European Union countries still holding on to that deal. So they don't like the troop deployment. There's more and more troops being deployed there, interestingly, but not so many that there would be a ground war expected. You need a lot more soldiers if you're going to go in on the ground with boots on the ground. So it certainly seems to line up with a tactical strike, a measured strike on specific military targets, specifically the nuclear facilities, etc. And that's kind of the key. They want to set Iran back a couple of years. They want to set Iran back, say, 5 years in terms of its advancement, its progress in the building of nuclear weapons, which it has stated that it wants to wipe Israel off the map. It wants to destroy them. And so they've come out and said that what their goal is with their weapons, with their military, i.e., to remove Israel from being a nation, push them into the sea, basically. And so that's what they're trying to push back. That's what Israel's trying to do as well. So here's another interesting one. In first, Israel's F-35s joined massive drill simulating war with Hezbollah and Gaza. So in parallel with the U.S. Increasing troops, getting ready for what apparently, according to the UN folks, is going to be a tactical strike on Iranian military facilities and nuclear facilities, Israel is also getting ready in parallel for a massive war with Gaza, with the Gaza Strip. Because when this happens, they're going to need to be ready for the proxy war, the proxy retaliation from Hezbollah, from Hamas, firing in potentially tens of thousands of rockets into Israel. So they're getting ready for a parallel deployment, a parallel battle exercise involving numerous strike craft, air defenses, and ground support forces. See army preparing for an enemy armed with advanced technology. So they've got even more advanced rockets now that are guided more and more. Some of their more advanced missiles are now guided. The Israeli Air Force is holding large-scale multi-day exercise simulating combat on multiple fronts, and that's really what's going to happen when these big wars break out. Iran's going to call on all its proxy armies to start hitting Israel, and that means all the pretty much all the sides. Of course, except the Saudi, except from the south, because Egypt and Saudi Arabia are generally on side with Israel, and they want to see Iran's power weakened in the area. But you've got Lebanon, you've got Syria, you've got Gaza, where the proxies exist and have thousands upon thousands of rockets. The drill, which began Sunday and ends Wednesday, involves fighter jets, helicopters, cargo planes, drones, air defense units, and ground support forces. It simulates simultaneous fighting in the Gaza Strip, Syria, and Lebanon. That's exactly what the next war will be, simultaneous fighting when Iran says, okay, we're being hit, all proxy armies start hitting Israel from all sides. And so that's exactly what Israel's getting ready for. So interestingly, it includes scenarios involving an army armed with advanced technology such as the Russian S-300 or S-400. So the suggestion is that when this occurs, Russia will turn, do an about-face, the hooks in the jaw will turn Russia around. Russia will then deploy and employ its air defense systems to defend against any strikes in the regions, maybe covering Syria in large part, definitely covering Syria in large part, and maybe covering Lebanon, which they were talking about, and maybe even potentially, if they have the range, maybe even to potentially cover Gaza. I'll just put that out there. Maybe they have range and specific defense systems that maybe even could cover that, and certainly cover a bunch of northern Israel, and maybe even deal with Israeli planes that are even over the landmass of Israel. And that would certainly be an escalation, but they have that capability. It says the drill is primarily focused on the northern arena with threats posed by Hezbollah terror group in Lebanon and Iranian forces in Syria. So they foresee, they do war drills and decide, where is the battle going to be coming from if Iran decides to sic its proxy war groups on Israel, if you will. And so this is what they're training for. We are training at a very high intensity with a challenging thinking enemy that possesses technology beyond what currently exists in the arena. So they're expecting some significant technology to come out, specifically guided missiles, whether that be laser, GPS guided, etc. And they're getting some of that technology from Iran. The official said the new F-35s provided added value of lethality and multi-role capabilities. We did not have these capabilities before. And as soon as you hear that, I think to the destruction of Damascus, flying these F-35s in under the radars of the F-300, S-300, S-400, getting into Damascus and doing some damage there to the military facilities, which, if you've watched my last video, you would know that there's military facilities embedded right within the city boundaries of Damascus. And so if Israel has to take out military facilities which have Iranian members, effectively that means they're going to go in and bomb basically right in the center of Damascus, these military facilities that are embedded there. And we know biblically Isaiah 17 speaks of the destruction of Damascus. The IAF has acknowledged receiving from the U.S.-based Lockheed Martin defense contractor at least 14 F-35 fighter jets. Of the 50 that have been ordered, these are scheduled to be delivered in installments of 2 and 3s by 2024. But I think they're going to have what they need before that period. Interesting timeline, though. Will this timeline be pushed up? Will they get them sooner than later? Will the U.S. even transfer some of its jets, F-35s, to Israel? It's speculation, obviously, but the fifth generation, and I'll end with this, the fifth generation F-35 has been lauded as a game changer because of its stealth technology. Not only for its offensive and stealth capabilities, but for its ability to connect its systems with other aircraft and form an information sharing network. So, a situation is building really for war in the Middle East. This is again another increase in rhetoric, in speculation, in rumors, in news about a strike on Iran significantly, and a strike and war drills against nations surrounding Israel. And in the last days, what will we hear about? We will hear about wars and rumors of wars. And you can take a look at all these specific scriptures from, just as an example, these passages, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I would suggest to you that I would not be surprised if, after the fact, we could take a look at this and say this was the exact plan of world events in the last days, even in chronological order. I think I would not be surprised if we looked at things in the past once these things have occurred and look back at that and say, you know what, that happened exactly as the Bible said it would. And that's not amazing to me necessarily, because we know that the Bible was inspired by God. So he knows the end from the beginning. He knows exactly what's going to happen. So he inspired the writers of these books to write these down in a particular order with particular words used, so that we who are in the last days can recognize the last days and say, yes, this is the time that the scriptures spoke about. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there, and we'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you know the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. He's coming back soon. Time is shortening. We are getting really into the last hours and seconds of the last days, I believe, on the large scale.